Hello, this is Christoph with Kaiserworks presenting the Vestry. I'm going to walk us through a site plan and a few preliminary renderings. We actually went the direction of renderings versus sketches because it was working a little bit better to visually evaluate the composition, and I'll get more into that. Right here we're looking at site plan. North is to the left. Here we have the main church at 9th Street and McKinley. And I'm going to start us up at Misa. So this little line that you'll see at the perimeter is our hedge wall, and I'll show you in the preliminary rendering mockups. We're testing two different heights for our conversation of this, but the idea is that this gives the edge boundary of the property a sense. There's a threshold. You walk through this, and the idea is that you're in another world. So, preceding the restaurant Misa, on the south side, we have an outdoor dining area. You pass through that. You can actually enter in two locations. You can enter on access with the historic walkway that leads you to the stairs, to the patio, and then into the restaurant. You can also come into what will be the primary gateway into the Vestry project. That is on access with this interstitial space between Misa and the existing church. These dashed lines right here denote string lights that we think is actually going to be a very useful tool to visually communicate, hey, this is a direction to walk, whether you're coming from the south or coming from the west. That will pull your eye into this north-south running circulation space. And because there are things like this stair and elevator here, and because the width changes, we need there to be a strong visual cue to really make this pronounced that this is a way to get to another realm within this larger project. So back to Misa, we played with a number of different layouts. This is similar to what we had talked about on site. Coming through the main entry here on the front porch, you are first acquainted with this bar that wraps around. We do like the idea pragmatically and also just from the story standpoint that there's a basement that you can gain access to. We think it may be practical for this to be a hatch so that people can walk across the top of it, but when they need to, they can flip it up, hinged on the back side, and go down into that basement for storage. Directly adjacent to that, we have the fixed bar. There's a back bar that runs along the length of that. On the east side of the space, we have booths that march along that wall. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 tables, and these can each comfortably seat 4 people each. Walking further back into the space, we come to what we call the node internally. We need to get two means of ADA accessible egress out of Misa. So one of those happens here on the east side of the building. And there's a lot of sort of rules we need to adhere to here. We need to have, we created a niche here so that your door can open to the outside without conflicting with the ramp. We need to have a 5-foot turning radius here. So coming out of this space here, you can head down this ramp back to the south side of the building. And then on the other side, on the west side of the building, we have our second ramp, again, necessary per ADA code. So you'd come up this ramp to the existing patio and into the building that way. There is alternatively a set of stairs in this location here in this existing niche, and that leads you back to the outside. And then beyond that, to the north, we have a kitchen that is tucked into that northeast corner, and then below that, we have 2 ADA accessible bathrooms with a mop closet at the back of that hall. We've played with other ways of rearranging this that would actually create a portion of this or turn a portion of this into exterior space, but that really gets expensive, to put it very, very simply, but that's something we wanted to talk to you about. There is a version of this where you would be walking from this location here, you would remain interior, and you would come into the bathroom volume that way, and that would allow you to have a bar that looks out to the main space, where you would see people operating and there'd be an expo counter, but that's at a fairly significant cost. So the latter, which I just described, was more in line with what we had talked about with Tika on site, where he would be operating back here and passing food across an expo counter to the front. Initially, when we did have that discussion, this was still thought to be presumably back of house where dishwashing and that kind of thing happens. Right now, we have a much more compact scenario given the fact that we do need to accommodate these bathrooms in this location. So Walking further to the north, we have our two existing bathrooms. Currently, we're leaving those. We have talked about putting urinals in this larger bathroom, calling it the men's bathroom, putting urinals there. But right now, we'd like to, just for economy's sake, use what is there and do a cosmetic remodel on those only. Directly to the east of that, we have the existing commissary kitchen. And then directly to the east of that, we have a refuse enclosure room. So to accommodate the trash that's required for all of these entities to be on the site, we need a substantial amount of trash. So this trash room, we feel is the best way to solve that problem in one sort of fell swoop. We have a roll-up door directly on the alley, and we know that waste services will actually allow you to have a contract with a private waste delivery person, which this would need to be anyway because it's a commercial entity, such that you're able to instruct them to open this rolling gate, pull out these dumpsters, and then service from the alley, versus having the required, very extensive trash truck radiuses being accommodated in a standard setup. So we think this is a very compact way to do this. It requires a little bit more footwork on the parts of the entities, but if you don't do it this way, you're going to have a lot more space eaten up with any other scenario. Walking into the Flowers building, there's two existing entries that we're using. This is the Flowers space. We have our point of sale, which is a long bar that runs north-south with a back bar, which would have kegs and taps for people taking growlers, for example. And then they have a door that goes into that refuse enclosure directly off the back area there. There's one bathroom that we feel we're going to need. If anything, we're tight on bathrooms as is with what we're showing right now. This is what we'd like to go forward with and see what the outcome of the city review is. So we've got a sort of open case refrigeration unit that's situated here, and then these would just be retail shelving for the rest of the space. Moving west in this space, we have our existing stair, and we come to the Pour More Airstream / Tiny Burgers court. If I'm out on the street here, I'd be walking along this hedge and then in through this portal. Large shade tree with outdoor seating. We have Pour More situated here. It's actually very tricky to get Pour More Airstreams situated on the site. I'm going to show you two different versions of how we work this out. Here we have our air conditioning unit enclosure. We're taking our our hedge along the edge of that, and we have our server window located here for Tiny Burgers, with a few cook lines that march off in the east direction and one service door. We also do think we could get a gate here that would allow Tiny Burgers to, for example, take their trash this way through the alley into the refuse enclosure. West of this entire scene, we have bicycle parking. This would require a right-of-way permit, or sorry, a revocable use permit. And then we have our ADA compliance parking space. And we've done some research on this. We can actually use street parking as an ADA parking space with a scenario like this, where you would have your loading zone that would bite into the existing right-of-way. This is the existing right-of-way that's currently grass. You'd have a ramp to the existing sidewalk, and then you would come into the space that way. So this is an effort to replace what is currently here. We have our ADA parking space here, and we know that we're going to need to, if we're relocating it, we need to find a new home for that ADA parking space. We feel this is a very good and sort of easy sell for the city. Pragmatically speaking, we may technically be able to get away with just one of these. Pragmatically speaking, we're concerned that if someone in a wheelchair is going to Mesa, for example, this is a long trek, regardless of which way they go. And so we're showing a secondary one, even though this might not be required. This is for discussion. I'm going to take us now to a slight variation of this plan, which positions Pour More on the northern edge of the property, and it gives you this more continuous outdoor seating area. Tiny Burgers is oriented with its window to the south. This is contingent on relocating the air conditioning units. There's a cost there. So it may be cost prohibitive. Maybe you've already looked into this. Having those AC units there, even the way it's been enclosed now, it's a lot of noise. It's not exactly a positive kind of noise, and space is precious back here. So one thought we had was relocate those AC units, to the roof of Tiny Burgers or somewhere else on another roof back up in here. And that gains you a lot of other usable space. And something that we just talked about before I started giving this presentation was actually a combination, a hybrid between what I just showed you in the previous plan and this one, where you would put the Pour More Airstream trailer back over here and have these sort of diagonally positioned across the way. I think that layout feels nice as well. What this arrangement gives you is the connectivity that we had initially discussed, which was on the western yard over here. This is a question though. We don't know if I go back to this previous plan, we think this actually works very nicely, and we may well be pushing it with the amount of outdoor seating that we would be showing with regard to our bathroom count if we were to add this to the mix. So this is something we wanted to talk to you about these two different options. Again, this one's only possible if we were to endure the expense of relocating those AC units. Here we're looking at the south facade. This is, I think, one of the more beautiful and iconic views of this project, or what will become one of the more iconic views of the project. In this first image, and again, we were going to do sketches initially, and I jumped in that way, but I just think compositionally it does a lot to be able to really do what these hedges do, which is block out what is beyond. And so I've just jumped in, and we've put a little bit more time in, but we're doing a preliminary rendering essentially. So here we have a gateway. We played with a lot of different languages here. We think a modern language, architectural language, which is that contrast with the history that exists beyond, versus doing something which sort of muddies those waters. This is an approach that historic preservation will appreciate for sure, and it's more in line with our general approach in any case. So here we're showing a 3.5 foot tall hedge. You see quite visibly into the space beyond. If there were people in this rendering, which we can do, we could talk about taking these all the way. But if there were people in here, you would see that activity very visually, whether they're seated or whether they're standing. And then here we're showing some string lights. This combined with a paving treatment, we think is going to do a lot to pull your eye into the project. In this next image here, we're showing 6.5 feet. So this is what we had initially talked about. This is the more cloistered approach where there's a little bit more mystery. We actually have concern here that this might be too mysterious and not give enough away in effort to pull people into the project. So this is something that we wanted to discuss with you. The second image here is the western facade. And this first image, again, same gateway piece that we would have on the south facade. We're showing, again, 3'6" as a hedge treatment. You would see the Airstream trailer just beyond, either here or in this location here. And we're proposing some trees as large as we can afford to get in that space right there. Right here we're showing Chinese elm. And this next image, again, is 6'6" with a much larger head. Again, I actually see this being potentially works better on this side than on the south side. I think we do just pick one and go with it, however. Our lean right now, as you may have noticed with my description on the first image, is this one here. But I'm honestly I'm on the fence, pun intended, on this particular facade, because I do think it would be nice to escape into a realm that is removed and different from the outside world. So we look forward to your thoughts on this. Thank you very much.